out here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of a Norwich-based band that were formed in the very early 80s, 80 to 81. It is the one and only Testcard F, because I spoke to Vince Rogers very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. They had several singles out on Bax Records in Norwich, and also they did a John Peel show. And I do believe, but you'll find that out in this interview, that Vince goes on to be part of another Norwich-based band titled G. Mr. Tracy and the Big Bang Band. So let's just get down to it, really. You don't need to hear any more, do you? So, yes, after several minutes of casual chat, we got down to that exciting subject that was the early formative years. It's a classic opener. Vince, tell us everything now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it must have been approximately the same time as yours. So I can remember, so at the age of about 13 or 14, Musical Awakening would have been, and it'd been like T-Rex, and like you say, hate to say Gary Glitter and all of that, because they would have fine singles. A little bit of baggage there now, but and you, David. I mean, it sounds like I'm perfectly in alignment with you.
Yes, the excitement of Top of the Pops.
Yeah, and then I kind of progressed a bit into prog rock, and there's a bit of Pink Floyd, and Rick Wakeman, I used to love, and Six Wives of Henry VIII, I used to have on a loop when I was about 14 or 15 or so. I was a big fan of Mike Oldfield and Tubular Bells.
Wow, that's
extraordinarily.
Yeah, no, it's not, because actually what happened was that I have a brother who's 7 years older, and he was perfect for prog rock. And during that period, he bought all those records. And also what happened, because I grew up in the countryside in East Anglia, it was very, a village working class background. So we didn't get a record. We hadn't got a record player when I was growing up until about 1972, 73. I think, parents in those days, working class, never, they never borrowed money, did they? They would sort of they sold everything when they got married, just got themselves a place, worked, got some, bits and pieces came into the house. And so, a record player appeared, and my brother started bringing in Yes, Genesis, Wishbone Ash, Barclay James Harvest, the solo work of Rick Wakeman. I know it so well. I'm not boasting, but he did. And he also had Tubular Bells, and plus Deep Purple and Black Sabbath. And he said, don't touch my records. And it's like, I won't. But then when he left the house, I'd sneak in, play them and go, my God, this is so amazing. Vivian Stanshall on, King Arthur, and, the Journey to the Centre of the Earth, and obviously the Six Wives was the classic, so all those albums, close to the edge, Topographic
But for me, there's an extraordinary pivot around about 1977 with punk, obviously. And I think I remember the first time I heard White Riots by The Clash and thought, this is awful. I just don't understand it at all. If I've been steeped in everything from pop and T-Rex through to Rick Wakeman to Mike Oldfield, and you first hear White Riot by The Clash, and it's very interesting. I didn't understand it at first. Now I think it's the most brilliant thing ever, and I did, maybe it took me a couple of months or something to kind of have that, you have to sort of change your filters a bit, and the musical world sort of shifted.
Yeah.
And you got, oh yeah, I get it. And I'm not entirely convinced such a change has happened in pop and rock music since. Such a massive kind of shift from the 70s, what was happening in the early 70s, to the punk and late 70s. And then again, there was another little bit of an earthquake when we went into, the synth-based techno kind of stuff, post-punk, all that kind of thing. I don't think a shift like that has never happened since.
Yes. Well, I know John Peel would often talk about that moment when, they saw Little Richard or Elvis Presley, because it was like that was that kind of moment where, and Lemmy talks about this, and David Bowie talks about this, because they were all of a certain age, where suddenly, it was like, have you just seen that? And everyone absolutely hates it, and it's absolutely outrageous, and they're going to have to ban it. And I suppose there was those moments that, it was quite something that, you know, it's kind of strange to think that people could get that worked up about it in now, sort of looking at it. So yes, interesting time. But then, where were you brought up? Actually, where did you grow up?
I mean, I was brought up in Birkenhead, which is near Liverpool, listeners. It's on the other side of the Mersey.
Yes.
And in a place, a housing estate called Woodchurch. And I left there by the age of 19 or so and headed for the University of East Anglia.
Oh, right. So that's how you came to be in dear old, the fine city that is Norwich.
The fine city itself, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I know that, I think Morrissey has a line about a girl from Birkenhead, didn't he? He took a tattoo girl from Birkenhead, or somebody. So that's where we sort of got to know about it.
All right. So arrived at the fine city around about 79 or so, and that was quite another kind of tectonic plate shift for me, and just opened up so possible music horizons. You know, it was fantastic.
So what happened? Why did you end up coming to the University of East Anglia? What was your reasons for that, from sort of Liverpool to the cosy countryside?
Well, I actually, I was attracted. I was going through the prospectus, and I ended up, the degree I was doing was biochemistry, but I was attracted by the fact that it had a student TV station. That was the only reason I applied and got in, and spent most of my time in this student TV set, Nexus TV it's called. I'm sure it must be well known now in Norwich. There's even a BBC documentary about it recently, radio documentary.
Well, I've been in touch with somebody.
Which I'm in, by the way.
Are you? Okay. Because I was in touch with a guy who was, he did this interview with Morrissey in sort of 83, and I sort of tracked him down. He was like, how did you do that? It's like, it's not that difficult. But you must have met him and probably sort of hung out with him. But I'd have to sort of look at my emails in the last 2 months to find out who that was. His name is. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if our paths might have crossed. I don't know. Maybe it was a generation later or something. I don't know. But anyway, so I arrived in UEA, spent most of my time in this student TV station, but started rather oddly to exploit the musical possibilities of the equipment that was in this TV station. So I had and made friends that I started making music with. I had and we had no access to any kind of tape recorders or anything like that, but there were video machines with 2 tracks on them. So we record 2 tracks on one video machine, a low band pneumatic recorder they were called. And then sort of bounce that between 2 video recorders, bouncing backwards and forwards. Quality was appalling, but we were able to layer up sounds. So a kind of a band evolved from that, which we called Testcard F, and that as the kind of the TV reference, because Testcard F is the girl with the chalk, but Norton Cross's girl.
Yes, which is people of a certain generation.
Yeah. And we just got our hands on pieces of lo-fi modern technology in approximately 1981.
Yeah, but so just slightly hitting the pause button there. So look, we had punk, for a few years in the UK, and then post-punk, and that was all very exciting and scratchy. So what made you sort of feel tempted with the electronic sound? Had you started hearing some kind of German experimental minimalist music from Neu, Kraftwerk? Or I mean, what was your reason? Because at that stage, I'm always a little bit rude about the Norwich scene, because it wasn't a great rock and roll city, was it? I mean, it was lovely, but let's face it, Cherry Red Records aren't going to put out a triple CD of Norwich bands from the 80s.
No. Well, it was quite quirky, and absolutely, Kraftwerk was the inspiration. It was kind of. Sorry.
Laurie Anderson, did she sort of come into your...
Oh, yeah, there was Laurie Anderson, well, Oh, Superman and all that. Yeah, that was around at the time. And it's Einstein Neubauten, or whatever they're called, but who was that other... Oh, there was an amazing German act, which was just like a drummer and a synthesizer, and that was it. What were they called? They were really hardcore sound. I can't remember.
There was DAF. Was it DAF?
DAF, that's them. Yeah. Deutsche Mensch Freundschaft.
I know, it all sounded very scary.
We kind of led into it because we were excited by those sounds, even though Kraftwerk was getting quite old by then. It was, at least 8 years old. But the few tools that we had seemed to point us in that direction. Yeah. I don't know. We hadn't really thought it through, really, to be honest.
No, but you were in your first year in the sort of student union nexus place, just thinking, I want to be in a band. This is quite exciting, isn't it? This is what being a student's all about. That and smoke and roll ups.
Yeah, it was just meeting a lot of people, like-minded people, and having some facilities and some places to go and rehearse and think stuff up, and using any bits of low tech that we can find. In fact, I've got this to. I have one of these were a real inspiration.
Absolutely,
I'm holding in my hand a Casio VL-Tone, which, let me switch it on. It makes a bit of a crackling noise, but hang on a minute. It does this.
Oh my God!
And I thought that is fantastic.
That is the future.
Hang on. Yeah.
And then we could listen to that all day. That wouldn't drive the neighbours mad, or the cats. Yeah, nice. So when did you sort of go from being, the Rick Wakeman meets Mike Oldfield, but probably with less kind of, musical talent? I'm not saying you haven't got musical talent, but they were quite.
I am.
Exactly. Because all those people had a kind of classical background, didn't they? And various kind of piano lessons from the age of 3, probably. So they had that kind of ability.
The rule was you kind of couldn't be in both camps, could you? You couldn't really, even though I suspect most people did. It would be, would have a few Pink Floyd albums and a few Clash albums. But the moment I sort of switched from one to the other, that would have been about 1980.
Right.
I'm guessing, something like that. Matching up with the time when I started becoming a student and mixing with people and starting to...
I don't know if people... See, Pink Floyd were one of those bands that people like to get stoned to, didn't they? That was the thing about Pink Floyd. That had that, and they had the lyrics, didn't they, of, Wish You Were Here, and everyone would get sort of, I don't know, romantically depressed about it and then smoke some more. So that was kind of, I think the joy of Pink Floyd, though, there was the T-shirt, the famous punk T-shirt, wasn't there? So I don't know, there was a lot of posturing going on at that stage. But then did you also come into contact with the I have to mention these, the Arthur Smiths, the Terry Edwards gang, the Higsons, Serious Drinkins, the Farmers Boys? Were they people that you sort of at all kind of met?
No, I never met Arthur Smith. Definitely the Higsons a bit, and Terry particularly. I think about 20 years later we made some brief contact and bumped into him somewhere. So yeah, we kind of knew each other a bit, and we'd be sort of playing on the same bill occasionally. I think, though, my memory's a bit blurred.
Yes, it is 40 years ago. I'm not surprised. Yeah. So when did you you got the name, which is always important, identity. You got the Casio synthesizer. When did you sort of form the band with, there was 3 of you, isn't there? Alpha 7. Was that really a person?
Yeah, that's Alpha 7 is a side project, a later side project of Pete, because the original Testcard F was me, Pete Roberts, John Hartwell, and Sue Hope. So there's 4 of us. Sue's on vocals. Alpha 7 was a later project of Pete, a friend of mine who I've kept in touch with. We now, by coincidence, live quite close to each other in southeast London, as it happens. So yeah, that's what Alpha 7 is. Peter's often been known, he's to this day as Pete Casio, because John Peel mistakenly got his name wrong. He's reading out something, on keyboards, Pete Casio, sorry, Pete Roberts, because he was supposed to say that Pete Roberts was playing a Casio, and he called him Pete Roberts, known as Pete Casio ever since.
Excellent.
Due to a slip of John Peel's.
And just to say that Pete Roberts is famous for also recording lifts, famous lift journeys of Norwich, isn't he?
Oh yeah, that was great. Yeah, he got on the Today programme, Radio 4 with that, I think.
Yes, I'm sure he went to Gerald's. That was a classic lift.
Yeah, well, it's one of those like brilliant ideas, and a lot of what Pete does is he's very interested in ambient type stuff, ambient sounds, and that falls well into that category. And he had this brilliant idea of doing these journeys. Often there are musical journeys, aren't there? But they're usually a bit more horizontal.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah,
a horizontal journey.
Brilliant idea.
Yeah. So as the band formed, and I mean, you got a John Peel session in '82. When was the first time you sort of went into the studio? I just wondered, because you got I've been listening today on Bax Records. You put out 2 singles, Bandwagon Tango and also Third Stroke. So this was kind of like towards the latter half of your degree. So the John Peel session came the year before.
Yeah, I think that I'm pretty sure that was the first time we were ever in an actual proper recording studio. When we did that, it was in Maida Vale.
Yes. Can you remember who your producer was? It wasn't Dale Griffith by any chance, was it?
It was. That was it. Yeah.
Oh my
Thanks for reminding me.
He must have hated you guys.
Dale Griffin, I think it is.
Dale Griffin, yes. But he's such a... Everybody... I mean, it's the one thing about doing this show, because everyone does a John Peel session. They normally say something about him, which I couldn't repeat on air, but it's quite blunt. They haven't forgotten him or forgiven him sort of 30 years, 40 years later, actually, Dale. So,
really? I've never heard of this.
They said he's an utter... but yeah,
well,
I think
because
he was a muso, and these indie bands would turn up and they didn't really know what they were doing, or they were just having a bit of a go, and it was like, don't hassle us, Dale. And he was like, you got 4 hours and you can't even play your instrument. So that was like, oh, okay, sorry about that. So there was a lot of tension, I think, with a lot of bands from Dale. But then he got a really great recording and a sound. So.
Well, I remember us going well late into the night, and I've never heard of this about Dale. He's no longer with us, is he?
No, he can't defend himself.
Like I say, we must have, of course, I think they went the extra mile for us and stayed late. I don't remember any tension.
No, there was no musical differences at this stage, because you did 4 songs, which is pretty impressive, and it had the full lineup of the band, didn't it, as well? Did you was it all very well rehearsed, so you knew exactly what you were doing?
I suppose I don't rehearsed is the words, but I kind of knew exactly what we kind of needed to do. I do remember there being someone mentioning, either Dale or someone, that the thing with a Peel session is you're supposed to really turn up and play live, and they record it. Well, we can't, at that point, we had no way of properly playing live. We didn't understand the 2 ways you can use a recording studio. One's to build up the layers, kind of as you normally would, or to come in, play it live kind of thing. We had no idea. We just showed up in a van with our bits and pieces. So we sort of we weren't rehearsed in the sense that we weren't playing it live, but we knew exactly what notes went where, kind of thing.
Yes, well, that's good. I think a few bands had that issue, didn't they? Actually, of wanting to have a pre-recorded, tape and sound, and having sort of issues. And you must have been incredibly pleased with the results of that session.
It was. You're bearing in mind, I was a teenager on a housing estate, but 3 years earlier, and then I found myself in what looked like the world's largest recording studio in London of all places. Yeah, it was sounding fantastic. You know, my mind was blown by the whole experience. It was just great, and we got a great sound out of it. And I'm not surprised the gear they had. And there were assistant recording engineers, and I can remember them wheeling pieces of equipment down the corridors and running off and getting extra bits and pieces to make us sound better.
Yes, and it had a distinct sound. Apart from the synthesizer, it was also Sue's vocals. Incredibly, they kind of juxtapose that kind of sonic soundscape really well.
Yeah. She had a very recognisable voice, a great tone.
Yes, because years later there was a band called the Dogface Hermans, and I know that again they had sort of quite a interesting indie sound, but more of that kind of, I suppose it was that New York scene from the no wave scene they referred to. A lot of bands on Z record label that. Also, there was a compilation with Brian Eno that he'd put together, and they sort of brought together sort of funk and African music as well as kind of those kind of scratchy guitar sounds. But often, with this particular band, the Dogface Hermans, the woman singing, who I think his name is Monica, but it might be wrong, she had quite an not operatic, but it's a very clear and solid voice. And I sort of found out that she had been a member, or her family had been, of the Salvation Army. So she'd sort of was singing in this style. And I just wondered what Sue's background of singing had been, because again, it was very distinct, wasn't it? It wasn't sort of trying to be a rock,
No, it wasn't. And I originally came across it. I was kind of introduced by a mutual friend, and we saw it. It was at UEA, and it was some kind of talent contest. And she did this amazing impression of Kate Bush. She came on as Kate Bush, and you'd kind of, it was like being in the same room kind of thing. And she did this Kate Bush number, and then this mutual friend said, you need a singer for your act, because at one point I was doing the vocals for it as we were kind of trying to figure the whole thing out, and it was absolutely appalling. Yes, this mutual friend put us together, and when you listen to it, you can actually hear a sort of northern Kate Bush going on if you listen closely.
Well,
think about it in retrospect.
And had you started playing live at this stage around the UEA, the barn?
Yeah, round about then. Yeah, I'm sure we must have played the barn and White's in Norwich, and we did a lot of supports.
And your image, you went for a slightly clean, tidy shirt and tie look, didn't you?
Early, yeah, I think. Again, it's one of those things, I'm not entirely sure we totally thought it through, and it was kind of its time, and maybe a little bit of a nod back to Kraftwerk. I think in some of our early gigs, there were definitely ties involved. I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to remember some of the few photographs that we got. But yeah, there was a nod towards the Kraftwerky kind of image.
Yes, there's a lovely picture. I think you must be in the underpass around the city, and there's the sort of the four of you on the steps looking down, and it's just a really nice black and white photograph that someone's put up, actually. And at this stage, were you looking at music as a possible, like, this could be it, with that kind of youthful excitement?
Oh yeah, definitely. I didn't see anything. There wasn't anything that I wanted to do. I wasn't particularly interested in my studies in any way. I was just there because I was there, because it was kind of what you did. I hoped, and my dreams were just to become some kind of pop star, just to be able to sit and write music and make a living out of it. Sadly, it wasn't to be.
No.
That was certainly the ambition.
Because having done this show for a long time, there's most bands have this 5-year narrative, as you probably gather. They get together, they have the 12 months, they get a single, John Peel plays it, they get the John Peel session, they then Yes, they then get that first album, things going quite well, do a bit of a tour, things going really well. And then there's that slightly tricky, the second album problem, which can be a little bit hard work. And I just wondered what it was like for the band. And also the other thing that happened during that period was that unemployment was quite easy to come by, and sort of job seekers allowance and enterprise allowance schemes. So people were able to sort of, for a while, sort of have some almost, you had a grant probably, but most other people had a sort of indirect grant from the government as they tried to massage the sort of unemployment figures. So I just wondered, you know, if the band had a slightly similar sort of story.
Yeah, it sounds about it. Actually, the band itself was most active when I'd actually left UA at that point, so about 82, 83, 84. So I was just kind of unemployed and on the dole at that time, making a few bob here and there, but really concentrating on trying to get something going with the band. But yeah, it's like you say, that narrative that must be very familiar to a lot of people.
They love it. And did you all live in the same house together, by the way, on Wingfield Road? Is this?
We did. Yeah, we did at one point. Oh, thanks for reminding me. Yeah,
all the great bands do, don't they?
Testcard House.
There might be a blue plaque
for a
there.
summer. There must be
a blue plaque.
If there isn't, there should be. We did live there for a while, and then we sort of. I know you said split up, but we went and lived in various other places. Again, my memory is getting a bit vague at this point. But yeah, we definitely all did live like we were like, the Beatles in our days and nights, or the Monkees or something like that. We all actually lived in the same house.
Yes,
I think the four of us in this house.
I think all the great bands have that period where they sort of work together, they live together, they having ideas, it's all going terribly well, and then it doesn't. And did you sort of keep the same lineup? Did Sue keep on vocals, or did she eventually? I mean,
well, that's the thing. That probably is another similar narrative that many bands have. When we left, I think we all left in 1982. John, Pete, and me left university and just sort of went on the dole and progressed with the band. Sue, however, had a different trajectory, and so she went and she got a job with, I think it was Marconi. There's something to do with designing missiles or something that was quite uncool at the time. I can't remember.
Yes.
But she, which is fair enough, she went off and had a career. So right, that's it, I'm off. Which I was well miffed at the time. That's not did not have the kind of commitment that the rest of us had. It turns out she was doing it for fun, which is in retrospect fine. Perhaps we should have took the same attitude. So she went off to get a proper job, and then I think we recruited a series of other singers to record stuff. I think our second single was.
Because was there another singer called Rebecca who came along?
There was, yeah. So there was, yeah. So Rebecca recorded the second single, and then we did some gigs with various other singers. But you can see the cracks appearing already in this. We weren't really kind of a cohesive unit at this point. So I think it just sort of slid downhill a bit at that point. Then we had to call it a day, I think.
Yeah, but you'd recorded 2 singles with Bax Records, hadn't you?
Yeah.
Which is good.
Right, yeah.
And you recorded at this famous studio in Cambridge, which was
Spacewood. Yeah.
Ward Studios, which is run by
right.
Joe Ball. So Joe Ball. So there you go. So because actually a lot of people, I mean, when you look at that CV of people who've recorded there, it's incredibly impressive. And I know some people try and collect or listen to everything that's ever recorded there because it's got a special vibe, as some of these studios do. So what's your memory of going there? Did you go there once or twice?
Well, that's a good question. We must have. I've got no recollection recording the second single. We must have gone back, and I don't know the answer to that question, worryingly. We must have done. We must have gone there twice. I can definitely remember being there once and recording the first single, Bandwagon Tango, definitely. I don't remember the second single.
Third Stroke.
Yeah. I remember loading all our equipment into the studio, which, that's another thing. Looking back at things in retrospect, there are things that you don't really realise at the time. That I didn't know it, that we had quite a unique sound, because we couldn't afford any instruments. So the synthesizer we had was one of the cheapest synthesizers you can possibly buy, which is the Wasp synthesizer. We had the VL-Tone, I've just showed you before, does the trio ding, ding, ding kind of thing. And we had a really poor drum machine. So we were kind of looking around University House, the Students' Union, and I found the waste paper bins scattered around the building, and they're all metal bins looking just like drums. So you try banging some of these, and oh, this is quite a good sound to mix in with everything else. So we had those, and there were also coat racks dotted around the building as well. So we snaffled some of those, so to hang bits of metal bins, a mug, beer glass kind of thing, so to have all these clanking sounds. And I've realised in retrospect, didn't realise at the time, we were just doing it because we had nothing else, that had a kind of quite a USP, that we were the band with the cheap synthesizers. Oh, a Farfisa organ I bought out of the second-hand advertising pages of the Liverpool Echo.
Excellent.
Just before I came over, it's really cheap. I bought it for 80 quid, I think.
And just on that front, did you used to go to Eric's in Liverpool quite a bit during your...
I did, yes. Yeah, very familiar with Eric's.
So you would have come across Big in Japan and Bill Drummond and
yep.
the Wild Swans.
And not Wild Swans so much, but what they called it? Oh, Teardrop Explodes. I was at school with the keyboard player from Teardrop Explodes, as it happens, in the same class.
Right.
David Balfe.
Oh my goodness.
He ran Food
Records, and he is the inspiration to the Blur song, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, the one about living in the big country house.
Yes, yeah. I know. He did very well.
Yeah. Now there's someone who had a trajectory in the music business that I would have liked. But there you go.
So was it kind of 84 was you did Third Stroke, and if only
84-ish, yeah.
If it wasn't, because you had also won the Battle of the Bands, hadn't you, as well, earlier?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And was this a UEA thing or a Norwich-based competition?
What, the Battle of the Bands?
Yes.
It was, well, there's a little bit of a story behind that. It was a national competition, properly funded somehow. I'm not entirely sure by who. And they'd have regional competitions, one of which was in Norwich. And the big prize, if you get through a regional competition, then you go down to the big one in London, which I think was at the Hammersmith Odeon. It was due to take place, and the winner of that would win a £10,000 advance, and they would be signed up to some label or other. So we thought, oh, this sounds great. So we took part in the competition and we won it, and that was a high moment. It was great. But then we had to look at the contract that we'd signed, and it was really not quite. It sounds great, £10,000. When you're on the dole,
yes,
£10,000 has a certain ring to it.
In 81,
yeah, that was back in the time when £10,000 was a lot of money.
Could have bought a house.
Yeah.
But there's a but, isn't there? There is a but.
But yeah, so it meant you were permanently signed if you won the main competition, the final. You would be permanently signed to some record label. I can't remember who it was, and they would give you, in inverted commas, only £10,000, and it was actually a really bad deal. So we got through to the final, and we didn't show up. I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh no!
We took the decision not to go, and apparently we weren't the only ones. A lot of the bands in the finals, we weren't the only ones not to show up.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, you made the right decision, didn't you? Really, unless it was just
it was on paper when you looked at it. Actually, it was definitely not in the band's interest.
No, there you go. So sort of 84,
and who remembers the winner of the Battle of the Bands now?
And it's never going to happen, is it really? But no, it's an uncool thing. But then sort of as the 80s were progressing, had you started seeing people, like your orchestral maneuvers in the dark and Joy Division and Soft Cell? I mean, were these all people that you were quite influenced by and thinking, yes, we're on the right track. This is new music. We're on the cutting edge. We're surfing the zeitgeist here.
Yeah, we definitely felt we were in with. We were on the same lines of, particularly orchestral maneuvers used to love them, and they're from my neck of the woods anyway. So we were definitely on the right lines and doing the right kind of things, making the right kind of sounds. But sadly, my songwriting skills were not exactly up to the scratch required to be another orchestral maneuvers in the dark. But to answer your question, we felt we were right at the cutting edge. We were doing the thing that everyone is doing at that time.
Yes, but Great Yarmouth didn't love you, did they? I got the impression from reading some article that you didn't manage to play the entire set without somebody pulling the plug saying, we won't be hearing from them again. Is this true?
Where was this?
Great Yarmouth. Did you play a gig in Great Yarmouth?
Oh God, yeah.
At the Big Apple.
No, that's going back a bit. That was before we had Sue on vocals. Sadly, that was me on vocals. It was one of our it might have even been our first gig. I distinctly remember setting it up, and I sent them a tape. It was in Great Yarmouth, and I can't remember what the venue was called, but they put bands on. I thought, oh, we'll go and play there then. Sent them a tape, said, yeah, we'll book you. We'll pay you 20 quid or something. And we played, and it was just kind of hard rock, heavy metal venue, and it was just a scene in 1974. There's just lots of people with long hair and greasy leather jackets and stuff. And to be fair, we did. We played our set, and there was no animosity towards us from it. It's not that cliche where we weren't canned off stage or anything. There was just kind of, all I remember is just like deep disappointment. We come for a night out on a Friday,
yes,
and we've got these synthesizer things. Where's the hard rock? And you kind of disappear. And I think the whoever's DJing it, said something disparaging at the end, and we won't hear from them. I think he might have said we won't hear them at this place, at this venue ever again, which was absolutely right, because they said we weren't going to book us again. But because we contributed to a kind of disappointing evening, a fight did break out among the clientele, and I definitely have a memory of a bar stool flying over the bar and smashing into the the bottles and glasses beyond the bar, which we were kind of responsible for. But it wasn't that kind of thing. It wasn't like in one of those comedy feature films where the band gets hated and a fight breaks out.
Yes,
but a fight actually did break out.
Like the Blues Brothers playing behind you. Yeah. And was it also true?
I think it was round about then. I thought, doing vocals, I don't think that's for me.
Yeah, you have to take. So because from this report, did the police storm the building? Has that been fabricated, or was that true as well? And you had to run into the van.
I think police were called. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure they would have been, since an actual fight had broken out in a bar. And I do remember piling into a van and trying to get out there quick, but more out of embarrassment really than fear for our lives. I could hype up this story to say we were running for our lives. But we did. I remember I was driving the van and I was doing a really quick 3-point turn to get out of there, because I just thought, I'll get out of it. And I did hit another car. I definitely reversed into another car. Don't know how much damage I caused, because it just accelerated out.
You got away with it. It was 40 years ago. They've let it go.
Yeah.
There's no one's going to know. But because you did support Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark and also SPK as well, didn't you? So you did have quite a lot of good supports at this stage. Were you going around the country at all, or were you supporting bands mostly?
No, we never really toured. Some of our really good supporters were at the UEA,
right?
Because we had the contacts there and everything. No, that was great. I don't think we even ever played in London. I remember once we played in Peterborough. I think it was about as far as we got.
Yes, because
so no, we never.
Because what I was going to say, because John, your other member of the band, he is Deaf Jeff, isn't he? He's the famous Deaf Jeff, the PA person. He does.
No, John. No, he's Jeff's assistant. He started getting work. So there was Jeff, who always used to do our PA.
Yes.
And I think John just used to get on with him, and he became just started working for Jeff as Jeff's assistant, and started taking on his style a lot. And starting to look more and more like Jeff as the months went by. So
the photograph of the band, and it looks like Jeff isn't Jeff, it's John in this photograph, because it does look very like him.
Well, I don't know the photograph you're
referring
to.
So we'll have to have a look at
the
website.
But there's, don't confuse your Johns with your Jeffs, wherever you do.
No, I shouldn't do that, should I? That would be a disaster. But yes, There you go. So you've got some good rock and roll stories. So 84, a big year. I know, I just remember because of the George Orwell, it was this big turn, like build up to 1984. And also, the indie world had really exploded in 83 with the Smiths, and there was a sort of a real surge of sort of indie bands appearing as well. So what was 84 like for you and the band and your musical direction?
Well, I think it was a time where, like I said, the cracks were appearing a bit, because we couldn't really find a singer who'd commit to us. We were having sort of people in the guest basis, and we kind of done our peel session. That was about it. And I think Baxter, I think they were starting to get a bit bored with us as well, because we'd done 2 singles, and that's it. We couldn't make any breakthrough further than that. I don't think the songs that I was coming up with were particularly brilliant around about that time. They were okay, but not fantastic. 84, 85-ish. We're starting to sort of hit get our feet stuck in the mud a bit.
Yes. And did you have a moment where you sat around the table in the pub? What was your favourite pub in Norwich, by the way?
Oh, was it the Plasterers?
The Plasterers, yes, we remember it well. Just near the Jacquard, wasn't it? In that direction.
Yeah, that's right. Is it?
Yes.
Kind of on the corner.
It was just down the street.
Yeah, Plasterers. Yeah, certainly Plasterers.
And did you all sit round the table and have to admit this was going to be the end? To quote Jim Morrison?
No, I don't think there's ever addressing the subject. I think it's probably the story with a lot of bands. The sort of contact with each other gets slower and slower and more intermittent, and rehearsals get fewer and fewer.
Yes.
I don't ever remember even having any kind of conversation about it. I myself was going off in another direction anyway, because I'd started up this act called G. Mr. Tracy at that point, and we were doing stuff then. That was kind of gaining a bit more traction then. So my focus was being probably pulled in other directions. But it was a shame then about Testcard F, because that was the love of creating songs and sounds which were original was great. The only problem was that it wasn't very good. It could have been a lot better.
Yes. So G. Mr. Tracy is another. I mean, just sticking a little bit with Testcard F, because it just would make it a bit easier before we go on to your other musical combo. But Cherry Red Records brings out a compilation, don't they? Decades later, 2019, which is electrical language, independent synth pop, and there it is.
Yep.
And you appear on it. So when did you? when did you get the call or the email to say, "Oh,
well, when they made this, so that was maybe two, maybe 3 years ago, something like that. And out of the blue, they got in touch.
Did you own your copyright, publishing and everything for the Testcard F?
Not really, and I think when on our scale and with such long amounts of time involved, I'm not entirely sure anyone's too worried about that kind of thing. To be honest, I don't think Bax Records exists as an entity, and I'm just getting the impression that no one's really worried about the paperwork.
No, I wouldn't have thought. But yeah, so they wanted a track for the compilation, or did they say we've already got this track?
Yeah, they got in touch and just said we're doing this sort of compilation CD, and we'd like to put you on it. I thought it's got to be some kind of joke. I can't believe it. So, who else have you got on it? Oh, the Human League, Orchestral Manoeuvres. What? And he said, well, we haven't got any master tapes or anything like that to give you. They're all long lost. We just got 45 wax vinyl records. He said, oh, that's not a problem. We do that all the time. So we just dub over from the vinyl single, and they stuck us on this compilation CD. It's a four CD compilation with 80 tracks on it. Looking at it, I've got it in my hand here, and it felt great because it's what it is. I mean, its catchline, it says Independence British Synth Pop, 1978 to 1984, and it's kind of a record. It felt like we'd made our mark, kind of thing. We're remembered after all these years.
I mean, it's fantastic.
Part of a thing in a way that we didn't quite know or realise at the time. I mean, I'd be astonished to think that anyone was still talking about this 40 years later. We're not exactly the biggest and most influential act in the world, but yet, nevertheless, Cherry Red Records, of all people, we finally got on Cherry Red Records after all this time. They got in touch and saying, yeah, we really liked your... the guy was really nice about it. He said, I can't remember the guy who's behind it, but he said, genuinely, I really did like Bandwagon Tango, which was the track they put on this CD. And he put it on disc 1 of the 4 discs and 80 tracks. It's actually track number 7.
I know. I was looking at who else is on there, and it is. I do think these compilations are amazing. Actually, there are so many good labels. Everyone's just been really excited about this 80s period and all these very obscure bands who often, for a lot of them, have just put out a few singles, a couple of flexi discs, split up, and then somebody, I don't know. There's Cherry Red. There's also another one called Fire Station Records and Cloudberry, and Optic Nerve Records in Preston, and they just love finding these little compilations, putting out either printing up 1,000, and off they go around the world. But this one from Cherry Red, because it's kind of one of those ones in the series, I would imagine they've done very well with it because it's 80 tracks, 4 CDs. And they've got a big. I mean, they're so well known, so it's going to be all over the world, isn't it? Basically. I wonder how many they got printed. Yeah,
and I think it's just a reflection of it was a moment of time that there was a certain very distinctive style and sound coming out of the country. I mean, you can't, I don't want to be derogatory to the musicians of the time, but you can't imagine a similar thing from, indie acts in 1973 or something.
No, I don't.
Not that they existed even. But you know what I mean? There's a certain sound. There's a certain thing going on with synthesizers and electronic pop music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Between 78 and 84, approximately. That there has no other similar thing going on. In 1968 or 1972 or whatever.
Yes, and then with that excitement, was it the case that you reformed or decided to put out another single on Bandcamp, Seconds Away?
Oh yeah, well, off the inspired by this, we kind of reformed. It's just me and Pete now. I've lost contact with John. Hello, John, if you're listening.
Yes, and what about Sue and Rebecca?
No idea whether I could probably track them down via Facebook, as you can these days, and they're probably on LinkedIn.
They could be.
I might have a look.
The trouble with, unfortunately, on this front, because I've tried, is that often if women get married, I mean, this might sound awful, but it's not really. It's not a hate crime, but it's just sometimes people change their surname, and it's like, I have no idea. You're kind of, whereas, people who don't change their name, you're a little bit more. You've got a better chance, basically.
And I find stalking so difficult because you're used to that.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? I know. Me and my indie world.
I am joking. Just to be clear.
just to be on record. Yes. So you and was it Pete or John you reformed?
Pete, yeah. So who coincidentally just lives down the road. So and I've been writing music, on and off over the years anyway. So I've got sort of tunes and bits of material backed up. So with a friend of mine who we roped in to do vocals, Sam Duffy. And it's so easy these days. You can just stick something on Bandcamp, and that's it. You don't have to find another Bax Records or listen to test pressings and all that sort of stuff that we went through. So it's very easy to do. So we put out a single called Seconds Away to very little acclaim. But we did it though, and I got the satisfaction of just kind of doing it. And was very pleased with the results, and still get I got someone bought a copy of it only just the other day, and dotted around the world, as the way these are these days. Someone from Russia or something will suddenly pop up. So I bought your record. I think it's great.
I think that's fantastic. It's really I love all this kind of stuff. So it makes it kind of more accessible and easy. But just then you mentioned, sorry. Was there more tests?
So it's a kind of it's a thing we want to pursue further. We've always struggled with finding someone to do vocals for us. So if this rings any bells with anyone, if anyone's out there who's interested in this kind of music and is a female vocalist, by all means do get in touch.
Do get in touch?
Yeah, and we might be able to do something to that.
That would be wild. But then, Mr. Tracy. So, did you have a moment in the wilderness, or was it just a seamless kind of in '84? You just slipped straight into this next band, or formed the next band?
It kind of slipped another. The thing about G. Mr. Tracy, it was essentially a joke. Testcard F was the series we were trying to say something. And do something kind of original. G. Mr. Tracy, which is another actor, is basically me and a guy called Brick Smith, who sort of shouted concrete jazz poetry with a very minimal bass line played by me and a drum machine, and that's kind of essentially it. And we started just doing in between acts at the Jacquard.
Yes.
And people from Bax Records are there going, "This is great," and I'm going, "Is it?" Yeah, this is fantastic. We should.
I saw the band live once in the. I think the last ever gig at the Arts Centre, and because the lead singer, from memory, tried to have that dishevelled, bohemian, wrecked, drunk look, didn't he, with a fag?
Yeah, always a fag in one hand, bottle in the other, kipper tie, loosely knotted. With the appearance of being really drunk, because he actually was. Shambles, very short sets, very short songs. We do 2 songs, 2 minutes long, and say, we're actually halfway through our set now. And do another 2 songs and then get off.
Yes, but you did 2 albums in 2 years and released 4 singles, all on Bax Records. So you did have a bit of an exciting couple of years there.
I know, and it was good. We played, we played overseas. We played in London, we played Spain, and we did a festival in either Holland or Belgium. I can't remember which. It was that was exciting and interesting.
And was Rebecca, who was backing vocals, was she also your vocalist in Testcard F at one stage?
Yeah, I think, didn't she pop up on one of our tracks. I think there must have been a bit of cross-fertilization. It is possible that she would have popped up on a G. Mr. Tracy record.
And the famous Howard Turner was your engineer.
Yeah, Howard, because he ran I think maybe the only or the largest recording studio in Norwich.
Yes,
and he was very good. We were all part of a kind of a connection of we all had contacts with each other, kind of thing. It was part of our own little mini scene, and we could use a lot of space in his studio for free. But I would work for him a little bit or help him out when he was building a new studio or something.
Yeah. What was your memory of the playing at the Jacquard? Because that's become sort of one of those clubs that people reminisce with great enthusiasm now.
Yeah, it's being very small, and small and claustrophobic, with a few kind of booths and a stage at one end and a bar directly at the back. I remember we got to the point, because within the small family and the scene, that I could just walk in without paying, like I'm royalty, because I was, just well known, just show up and see the woman behind the bar. Hello, Vince. Just walk in. There was always in the corner of the bar, no matter what night it was or whatever was on, there was a continuity presenter from Anglia TV. Would always be sitting at the same place, propped up at the end of the bar, because I think his job was to close down Anglia TV, and Jacquard was the only club with a bar that was open at that time of night. So he'd go in. What was his name? Bacon, something Bacon. John Bacon? I'll have to Google him now.
I know, John Bacon.
He was always there. Obviously not for the music, because he was, he must have been about 50 or something, 55.
But I think those presenters who'd been around from the 60s, they all used to drink and smoke, didn't they? And they looked like they were, I think they all died quite soon of heart attacks and stuff like that. But I seem to remember, various people that you'd see around. You think, oh, he's on the telly. And you think, my goodness, he looks incredibly wrecked, So, yes, I think that was a different time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the club was quite a family, and all the bands would play and do their sets, but sometimes there'd be a bit of intermingling. I can remember, in that Norwich kind of fashion, we did a night, and it was every song was by Cliff Richard or something. I can't remember now. It was like one of those little comedy things. Yeah. It was one of the few times I actually played guitar on stage at the Jacquard Club, in that sort of tongue-in-cheek sense of humour, Norwichy kind of way. But it was the place. It was the Eric's Club of Norwich. Yeah, it was the Cavern Club of Norwich.
It did have a good vibe about. And then, sort of, what happens kind of then when? So was G. Mr. Tracy just a short project just to do until you think, 2 albums, that's quite plenty?
Well, again, I think we just rode along with it, and then it itself just fizzled out. I think I'd got a job in London. I think that was the problem. I'd moved down to London, was working in radio, and Tom at Brick Smith, those of us that knew him called him Tom.
Yes.
Was in Norwich, and I think that kind of fizzled out because I was just started focusing on the job that I was doing down in London.
Down in London, and what happened to Tom?
I don't know. He's. I know. I heard of him briefly about 10 years ago because he had an art exhibition on, because he was a very talented painter.
Right.
And he'd done portraits in oils, I think, of jazz greats.
So what's his name? Tom
Smith.
Tom Smith.
Again, it's the Smith thing. It's the male equivalent of a maiden name. Try Googling.
Just try and forget it. You're gonna have to do that.
His name was Brick Smith. Brick as in a wall. And the Fall were playing once in Norwich, and he walked up to Brick Smith and said, "Hey, guess what my name is?"
Yes, and she must have laughed.
Yeah. Oh, how they laughed. Yeah.
How they laughed. Yeah, with Marky sort of sneering in the background. So then, is that so for the rest of your life? Was it not rest of, but just generally? Does music kind of go to the sort of side, and then it's work and careers and ducking and diving?
Yeah, it comes in waves. That's I've always had great pleasure in just writing tunes, and the technology is superb now that we didn't have at the time when we were bouncing between the audio tracks of video recorders. Now I'm sitting and looking at a virtual recording studio with an infinite number of tracks I could use.
Yes,
and any instrument I want, which actually is a bit more difficult than when we were struggling with just a VL-Tone, a Farfisa organ, and a Wasp synthesizer. Sometimes when you're forced to use limited tools, then you can be a bit more inspired. But anyway, yes, so I've just tinkered around with the music ever since, and hopefully Testcard F would still be a going concern.
Yes. Have you got plans to do any more?
Expect a release.
Have you got any more recordings?
I have stuff backed up. I've got stuff written, ready to go. It's just the vocals has always been the problem. I've been searching around actively. There are websites now where people kind of, you can find like-minded musicians.
Yes.
And I recorded a track with a woman just about a month ago. She was enthusiastic at first, and then suddenly went very cool on it when she realised the standard of stuff that I was writing. Apparently, not quite up to scratch. She was good. She was classically trained, could sing opera and everything. She would be brilliant. But you've got to be, you've got to like the stuff. You can't just, you can't just do it and not like it.
It's so tricky, isn't it?
Who wants to do that? Yeah.
Yes. And look, if you could have said something to your 16 or 18-year-old self starting out, is there something you would have just kind of thought, God, I wish I'd known this when I was that age, when I was kind of just, had just finished doing my A-levels and about to hit the fine city of Norwich?
That's such a tricky one. There's advice to my younger self.
Yes, I know. I have to try and use. I just wondered if there was kind of a couple of things, like over the decades, and with all the experiences, you'd have thought, God, yeah, that's something that I would have. Yeah, that's something I've learned over this period.
I think persevere, and I think if you're making stuff, it might actually have gone a lot wider than you think it's had. And so don't be afraid to put out feelers to push what you already have.
Yes.
Because you might be surprised that someone from Cherry Red Records actually knows about you.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? That is just amazing. Have you ever received a royalty check? Have you almost said, my God, I've got £20?
Yeah, we used to. I haven't had one for years, but yeah, we used to get royalty. We used to get these big computer printouts back in the old days. You got played on Radio 1. It's great. You get like 70 quid or something. You get something played on Radio 1. Always used to get because it was all divided up into regions and nations and stuff, the computer printouts. And I get every year I get 50p from Finland. I have no idea why. And I think something that I've written is the theme tune to some radio show in Finland. Some regional, some tiny little village on the Arctic Circle has got a tiny radio station, and its theme tune is Bandwagon Tango.
That is so cool. I just remember a couple of years ago, I did an interview with this guy who was at the UEA. Was he there at the same time as you? This guy, he did a book which is called And he was from America. He came over. He did his 1 year in at the UEA. And I suppose actually there is a photograph of him in his student residence. And I just wondered. He went, "Oh God, yes, I remember him." Chris Dawes, 81. Look, there he is.
No, I recognise the wall behind him.
Well, funny
They all
enough,
look like
I think
UEA.
there's a magazine called Electronic. It's kind of like what everyone who's a bit nerdy is into, and the guy who apparently started it is the one who's kind of sitting there having his throat almost pretended to be
Head chopped off. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah,
No,
so
I don't know. I don't know him.
so this guy was from America, but he was obsessed with posters and flyers, and he started collecting them, and then put this book out. And I just thought, I wonder if that was around almost the same time as you were there. And I thought that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a conversational killer, wasn't it? Never mind.
Yeah.
It's all good. I know. It's funny, isn't it? 40 years ago, all this stuff becomes like art. It's suddenly like, no, don't throw it in the recycling. Or, yes, let's put it out on a nice compilation. It's really good. We need to archive it. And you think, and I noticed that dear old Robert from Hawkwind is on that compilation, Calvert. The electronic one, and he's one of these kind of everyone thinks he's a sort of a mad genius who was a bit also schizophrenic, which doesn't help. So it's an amazing collection. So I'd love to know how many copies Cherry Red eventually sells of it. Who knows? We'll never.
It'd be interesting to know. I suspect they sell a lot of copies to all the people who are actually on the compilation.
Yes,
and since it's 80 tracks on this,
but I'm pleased they gave you a copy.
I think I bought it. Actually, I think I actually bought it. I don't remember getting it free. You'll notice I haven't opened it. It's still in the shrink wrap.
It's too.
You're sticking that on eBay soon.
There you go. Well, look, thank you ever so much for giving me the time for all this, Vince. This has been amazing. And it's great your dog's just been in the background, relaxing.
Oh, she. Rosie. Hello. I've woken her up now.
I love that face. It was like...
I didn't spot her, though.
No.
It's always getting in on the act.
Yeah, this has been very good. But look, if you want, I can, when I put this out, I can always send you the link, and then you can always, put it on your, the Facebook page of the band, and you never know. People do love to listen to them. And bizarrely, I find doing this show, the more obscure the bands, the most popular they are. So I think it's because actually everyone's heard most people, but it's all these kind of very obscure bands that someone, my God, I remember that band, I love them, and all that, and then they get kind of a bit of excitement about it to hear the story.
Well, nothing if not obscure.
So I would have seen you with G Mr. Tracy. So sort of, I think sitting down at I think probably on the floor at the art centre and just doing a set.
Yeah. It kind of annoyed me weirdly because at one point the act that I'd kind of set up as a joke was actually more popular than the act that I was pouring my heart and soul into.
Yes,
it's kind of stuck in the craw a little bit. But,
never mind.
What can you do?
There you go. But look, thank you ever so much. And look, again, a huge thank you for this. And look, I'll keep in touch. But
so is this going your radio show?
Yeah, so I'll often play some of it on the radio show, and I also put it as a podcast.
Not the whole thing.
Put it as a podcast as well, because people, love to hear the whole interview. Have you seen my collection? It's amazing. They love it. So yes, I sort of, so people do like listening to the whole story of a band. For some. Helps them get through life, I think, and also people love the curiosity of these things. So, yes, there you go. But look, thanks again, and I really appreciate your time. So,
thanks for getting in touch.
Yes, I know.
If you come across a female singer,
yes,
point her in our direction.
I will do. Anyway, look, take care. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and you. Thank you.
Right. Bye bye.
Nice to speak to you. See ya. Bye.
And there you go. That is the end, to quote Jim Morrison. A massive thank you to Vince Rogers for giving me the time for that interview. Talking about Testcard F, the early experimental synth pop band based in Norwich, and also G. Mr. Tracy. And I do believe if you go to their Facebook page and just put in Testcard F, there is more information and various other bits and pieces. They seem to be slowly getting, I don't know, on Bandcamp and stuff like that. And they also had a compilation on Cherry Red Records, Electrical Language, Independent British Synth Pop, 1974 to 1984. 4 CDs and a massive booklet. Anyway, there you go, check it out. If you want to contact me for some incredibly nice reason, you can on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, just do C86 Show. And also, these have all been archived interviews, so you can find those on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Anyway, look, have a great week. Stay safe.